Okay, I think we will commence. Welcome everyone to this MYOB Advanced User Group, coming to you live from the offices of Kilimanjaro Consulting in North Sydney. My name is Kelly Savage and I will be the MC for this afternoon. Looking through some of the names that have joined us. Many of you will know my face, my voice, if not my face, as I work in support for MYOB Advanced for Kilimanjaro. Normally we run these sessions in person. Obviously this year that's not possible thanks to COVID. But the ultimate aim of this user group is communication. We have a number of guest speakers who will talk to you today on the theme of connected business and experiences that matter. But with all communication, it's a two-way street. So there will be time for questions and answers at the end. We do ask, if you'd like to ask a question, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. And we prefer you to ask there rather than the chat. As I said, there will be time at the end so we can answer a lot of those questions. So before we commence, I'd just like to take this opportunity to welcome the main sponsors of this event, being Kilimanjaro Consulting and Enprise Solutions, for making this event possible. We would, excuse me, we would also like to offer a special welcome to MYOB. Simone Leslie is going to join us later. She is MYOB's Senior Partner Manager. And so let's take a look at the agenda for this afternoon. To start with, we're going to have a welcome from the key sponsor. We will have an update from MYOB. And then our keynote presentation is on MYOB Advanced Experiences That Matter. We're then going to hear about some client success stories. And after a quick break, Stephen and I will talk through the MYOB Advanced releases, compliance and industry updates. We have a number of people keeping an eye on the time, so we should run to schedule and that will enable us to have a decent amount of time at the end for Q&A. So feel free to ask questions as we go. So without further ado, we have the welcome from the key sponsor. I'd like to introduce Ronnie Baskind, who is the CEO of Enprise Groups Enprise Division, which comprises of Kilimanjaro Consulting in Australia and Enprise Solutions in New Zealand. Over to you, Ronnie.
Thanks, Kelly, and thanks for that welcome. Also, thanks to User Groups for having us again as the main sponsor this year. As Kelly said, this used to be a physical roadshow. We went around the country, usually started off in Perth, and then we would do Melbourne, Western Sydney, Sydney, Auckland, etc., etc. So in some ways, the virtual reality has made it much easier for us to communicate with our clients. We had a great turnout at these user groups last week, and it looks like that's being repeated again today. In a way, we have nationalized and internationalized the user groups because we're talking to an audience today across Australia and New Zealand. So it seems like yesterday when we were talking about stopping the spread of the coronavirus, and if you look at the dates over there, December the 31st, 2019, when we first heard about this cluster of cases of pneumonia of unknown causes in Wuhan, China. In some ways it seems like yesterday, in some ways it seems like an age ago, when we went from stopping the spread of the coronavirus to flattening the curve. And it was in March that the coronavirus, or COVID-19 as it became known, started to really impact on the businesses that we serve in Australia and New Zealand, as those social distancing rules were imposed and other restrictions, non-essential services were shut down and so on. And where are we today? Today we are at a point where we can start looking beyond coronavirus. So we're able to look beyond, and what's happened is that as more information has become available to us, the fear has started to subside, and we can now get numbers. We can start looking at mortality rates. We can look at how many people have recovered. We start understanding that there are treatments for cases that are not that severe, etc., etc. And this is what's happening in the environment we're in at the moment. And the most important thing for us and for you in business is to understand how you're responding to that external environment. The way most businesses do that is they gather information And the advice is obviously to gather information from as many sources as possible, because all information is somewhat distorted. To then plot out some scenarios, make your choice on what the most likely scenario is going to be, act on that, and then check back in again and say, were the assumptions that I made when I chose this scenario, were those assumptions correct? So it's a cycle of then gathering information, verifying the data, and making sure that you've acted correctly. And if you haven't acted correctly, the ability to pivot and to change what you're doing in line with the new reality and the new scenarios. Certainly, we've seen in our client base that everyone has had hardship, but it's also true to say that most of our clients have survived. A very small percentage of clients haven't survived, but generally entrepreneurs are a resilient lot, and they've all managed to do this, to pivot, to make changes, to adapt, and to keep going. So when we look at how one does that, what you want to be doing is to look at the external environment and approach the threats as well as the opportunities from a position of strength. So what you want to be doing is identifying in your own business what you're good at and what you're not good at. So in terms of being above the line over there of my in my slide, above the line is internal to the business, below the line is external. So internally in your business, to identify your strengths, identify your weaknesses, and then to move towards improving on the things that you're not good at to make them into strengths. Because from a strategy point of view, what you want to be doing is you want to be using your strengths to address the threats out there, and you want to be using your strengths to take advantage of the opportunities. And those are the sorts of offensive and defensive strategies which are good in business. But what you don't want to be doing is you don't want to be looking at a weakness and seeing an opportunity, using your weakness to attack or address the opportunity. To give you an example of that, in Sydney, there's a gin distillery called Archie Rose. And what Archie Rose did is they realized they were sitting on huge volumes of pure alcohol. They had a bottling plant, they had a distribution network, and they pivoted and they started making hand sanitizer. And that was an extremely successful strategy because they identified their strengths and took advantage of the opportunity. However, if you think about somebody that may be a travel agent and may decide to start making hand sanitizer, you can see that that would end in disaster, because that's from a position of weakness, trying to take advantage of an opportunity. And we all know what happened in Victoria, where the travel agents took to contact tracing. That didn't work out too well either. So having had a look at that, how one addresses strategy, let's have a look at what's actually happened in the market with coronavirus. So the main thing is that it's accelerated the adoption of technology. So we are starting to see new technologies emerging, but essentially this is about the accelerated adoption of technology. Everybody logged onto the internet at the same time. It didn't break. All of the criticism of the NBN in Australia has evaporated because people have seen the benefits of having faster and more reliable internet connections. And a lot of the fear that the technology wouldn't work has evaporated. So I'm going to look now at the 5 trends that we see coming. This is not a crystal ball into the future. This is in fact what we see as starting to happen already and will no doubt be continued over the next 12 months. So the first thing is that people are moving their data to the cloud, and the audience we're talking to this morning, all of you are on MYOB Advanced. You've already moved your services to the cloud, but people are starting to move data to the cloud, which means that files and spreadsheets and documents and so on that would normally be saved on your own file server are now being saved to online services such as OneDrive, Google Docs. Office 365 also allows a lot of flexibility in that, SharePoint, and so on and so on. And this has come about because of increased speeds, internet speeds, and the reduction in the cost of these online platforms. The other thing that's impacted on that, obviously, is that people have become familiar with the security protocols. You've got used to 2-factor authentication. You've got used to using your own device for getting that 2-factor authentication. and you've got used to using complex passwords. And I should perhaps at this point just issue a word of caution in that scammers are a very innovative mob, and the simple things are the ones that get you. So you've got to continue to watch out for emails with a link that you might click onto, and something pops up and says, please log into Office 365. All that they're doing is they are taking your username and password, and then obviously once they get into your 365 Outlook account, they can wreak absolute havoc in the organization, sending emails to people in the organization with links to crypto-lock viruses and so on. And we still see a lot of that happening. The second trend that I wanted to talk about was the trend of moving applications to SaaS. Now, as I said, this audience has already done that with their primary ERP systems using Advanced. But what's accelerating the change is that as end users have got used to paying small incremental amounts, be that for Netflix or Anytime Fitness or Office 365 or their iCloud subscription for their iPhone, etc. But people are seeing the benefit of these small incremental amounts rather than paying big lump sums upfront. A few years ago, that was seen as a negative, not as a positive, and that's changed in the market. People have also adapted to continuous upgrades of online software. So you know when you log into Microsoft Teams, you suddenly find new functionality that wasn't there yesterday, and the same, of course, with MYOB Advanced, although that's in a much more controlled environment. And the other thing is that the merging of home and work life means that users are familiar with the navigation of the SaaS solutions, which are delivered through their favorite browser. The next trend that I want to talk about is one which I call data is data. So with data is data, just winding the clock back about 20 years, when every programmer had some protocol that would lock in his software so that nobody could steal it. It was his intellectual property, and his data was encrypted in a way that nobody could get their hands on it. And over the 20 years, this has changed, and people are seeing the benefits of what's called interoperability. So no matter what software your data is in, it is available to other pieces of software, either through an API or which acts as a translator. But essentially, if data exists in one system, it can be used in another system. And generally, the cost of building that integration is fractional compared to the efficiency gains. And I'll talk in a moment about efficiency gains. The next trend is everybody is always online. So this has been a massive shift. People working from home, they're online, and they're either on social media or they are looking at their work emails and so on. And humans are social creatures. I was reading something recently from Andrew O'Keefe, who's worked quite extensively with Jane Goodall with the chimpanzees. And he made the comment that humans are social creatures, and they're one of the few mammals who have a lot of facial muscles and can create a lot of different expressions. And we like to see people's faces. So if you can imagine this COVID world, if we were trying to transact now simply on the telephone by voice, it would not be very rewarding. The fact that we can see each other and see each other's expression makes a huge difference. So the always online trend will continue, including the trend to video conferencing and so on. The other impact of always online is always online reporting. And whereas before you were satisfied to wait until 10 days after the end of the month to get your management reports, you now have an expectation that you will be able to see your reports online and see them online instantly. And that's a continuing trend. So in actual fact, I picked up a graph the other day which showed that by 2025, 30% of the data in what's called the global data sphere, that's all information flowing across the internet, by 2025, which is only 5 years away, 30% of that data will be in real time. And you can see then how important it becomes to make sure that your systems are starting to move in that direction, that you can get real-time information across the organization at any time. And the next trend I'm going to speak about is payments. I'm actually not going to dwell on this too long because both Stephen Friend and Stuart will mention this in their presentations, but essentially the coronavirus pandemic has accelerated the disappearance of cash in our society. And you have to feel for the beggar with his begging bowl on the corner, or the guy cleaning your windscreen at the lights, or indeed for the coffee shop downstairs where cash has just disappeared and every transaction is being done by debit card, credit card, or in fact, electronically. So those are really the trends that we are seeing that are emerging. And then to finish off, just to remind you what Kilimanjaro and Enprise are here for, and indeed any implementer of MYOB Advanced, your channel partner. But we are about improving efficiency in your business through the clever use of creative, innovative, and proven technology. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is how can we improve efficiency in your businesses? How can you build off the transition that you've already made into a SaaS service, MYOB Advanced, powered by Acumatica, and what we can do to help you. The case studies, the client success stories will also give you some motivation to start looking at these things and making these changes. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Kelly. Kelly, thank you very much. And I hope that the user group today goes as well as previous ones have gone. Thank you.